This video is going to go over how to use the type tool and how to manipulate type after you're done writing it out. So for example, this is the type tool, and when it's got the box like this, I can click and it's going to fill in with lorem ipsum. It's filling in with Arial because that must have been the last thing I've used. Usually it fills in with Myrid Pro, but you can choose whatever font, which are preloaded into Illustrator. So let's say I want to use, any of them are fine. We'll do Poor Richard, I guess. All right, so I chose Eris Light ITC, and I'm getting lorem ipsum, which is just dummy text, and it's just filling in. And while it's highlighted, I can type in, let me try that again. While it's highlighted, I can type in whatever my company is. So for me, it was Capital Region Underwater Hockey. Just like any other path, I can use the selection tool. I can drag this around. The one thing you kind of want to avoid is dragging the corners because you're then changing what the type looks like unless you're going for that. Try to avoid that and just use the point changing. The other way that you can change the size of it, if you're not sure how big or small you want to do it and you just want to do it by sight, I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to hold Control, Shift, and the caret keys on my keyboard. So I'm making it smaller, but it's staying proportional. So that's the difference between grabbing the corners and using the shortcut that I just did, or adjusting the points, is that it's going to stay proportional. So I'm going to drag this around a little bit again. All right. Other things I can do with the type, while it's selected, I can change the color just like I would anything else. I can change the stroke, although you generally want to avoid that with type. I can change, if it gives me the option, I can change it to bold or regular or italic, but not all of the fonts give you that option. I can change the opacity. I've got paragraph options, so I could shoot it left or right depending on how big of a text block I'm working with. When I'm done setting it as much as I want to, using the type tool, if I want to manipulate it further, potentially manipulate single letters, what I need to do is go to Object and go to, Type. I lied. Go to Type and go to Create Outlines. Now what I've done is it's not going to be editable using the type tool anymore. Each of these has become an individual path. And so if I look in my layers panel, I've got a group. So all of my letters are grouped right now. So let's say that I want to mess with the R. So with my selection tool, I'm going to double click on the R. I've now entered isolation mode, so everything else is grayed out. And let me click back into the R, and I can tell that the R is right there, partially because it looks like an R and partially because it's got this red right next to it. So I'm going to zoom in, and I can see all of the points on this letter. So if I want to manipulate it, let's say I want to move all of these points at once, I'm going to actually hold Shift and grab all of these anchor points while I'm holding Shift, and then I'm just going to click outwards with my, or click to the left rather with my arrow keys, or I could drag and it would adjust all of them. So either way works. I could also do individual points. So let's say I wanted to, or individual anchor points. So I could pull this in if I wanted to. If I wanted to make it curve more, I can use the anchor point tool. So it's going to act exactly like any other path within Illustrator. So I can make that a little curvier for whatever reason. Okay. So now I want to exit isolation mode. So at the top, I'm going to click on this back arrow and everything goes back to normal. And I've adjusted just the R in this situation. If I want to move individual letters, again, I could go into that isolation mode and I could move these over, or I could hold Shift and grab a few of them to move them all over closer, and then I could just grab the G and grab it, just grab the I and, you know, however you want to work it so that it looks visually interesting, works with your brand, etc. If I want to break these apart for some reason, because right now within this group, the group is on top of my fin. If I want this to interact a little bit more, I can, oops, let's see, if I right click, I can ungroup, and now each of these individual letters is an individual, it's just a path, it's ungrouped. And so, for example, I could take the U, the W, and the H, which are these three paths right here, and I could drag them below the other path, so now it's behind. If I wanted to, obviously, losing the visibility on that isn't a great idea, but it's an option that I have. Even though they're now outlined, and they're not part of the type tool, I can still change the color just like I would for any other path. So I could go in and adjust the color of just this letter, etc. So you can, as soon as they stop being part of the type tool, you have to set them individually, unless they're, you know, grouped together or you're selecting them together. But you can no longer change the type face once you've changed it to the outlines. Now it becomes a path and it's its own separate entity.